Damn, I just got the private investigator's report. This is the fourth investigation in as many years. Jason Thomas, a private investigator, just did it. Over the past 4 years, I have used 4 different private firms using random cities at random times of year, thinking that my wife and her lover had deceived the previous ones, but this new investigator would discover their deception. I just got off the phone with Mr. Thomas. He told me that his people here and his colleagues in Dallas had been watching my wife Molly and John Decker for a week, both when they were in their office the first 4 days of the week, and in Dallas where they were both attending a work seminar for 3 days. My wife Molly was the administrative assistant to John Decker, the CEO of a subsidiary of a large international holding company. As an administrator and assistant, she usually traveled with him, and he traveled a lot. Mr. Thomas said he would send a written report, but in general he noted, for 4 days here before going to Dallas, they were followed and watched. They ate lunch together all 4 days and then went straight back to work. On the second day, the two of them went to a local bar after work. Each of them drank 2 glasses, and then each went to his own home. Their spouses were at home when they arrived there, and we stopped monitoring, assuming that the spouses would know about their activities until the next morning. The other 3 days, they both drove straight home from work, and their spouses were there when they arrived. The trip to Dallas wasn't much more interesting. Each of the 3 days they attended the workshop, as they were supposed to. Every evening they had dinner together, and every evening they went dancing. After about an hour of dancing and drinking, they went to their hotel rooms and did not leave until the morning. Their rooms were separated by 10 other rooms, so there was no connecting door between the rooms. The camera pointed down the hallway showed that each night neither of them left their room until the next morning. The only thing that was suspicious was their dancing. My agent described it as 2 people in love dancing. There was no inappropriate touching, but there was definitely intimacy, and he usually hugged her all the way to their table. They were followed to the airport, and the agent verified that they boarded and that the plane actually flew home. 4 private investigator reports on random dates over the past 4 years found basically the same information. Nothing. Molly and I are both 36 years old and have been married for 15 years. We were exclusive for the last 3 years of college and got married shortly after graduation. Molly isn't pretty, but she could be considered a cute doll with a fantastic 5'6" body. She is very outgoing, and people like having her around. Her boss, John Decker, is about my height, 6'1", 190 pounds, but if it were between the two of us, John, not me, would get all the girls' attention. He's quite an attractive man. I spoke with Molly several times about her apparent closeness to John Decker. The first few times she said that there was nothing between them except work. She promised that she would never fool around behind my back and even offered to take a lie detector test any time I wanted. She said they were just colleagues and good friends. The last time we talked about it, she called him a special friend. I think he got a promotion. Molly and I went out to dinner and danced with John and his wife Gail several times. John and Molly talk to each other and dance with each other much more than they do with us, their spouses. One day, as John and Molly took to the dance floor, I noticed Gail raise her eyebrow as if to say, "What, again?" I think she notices their closeness too. I talked to Molly about getting another job just to reassure me, just because I'm so jealous that she's so close to John. She says, "This is stupid. She loves her job," and again tells me that she would never go behind my back and that she would be willing to take a lie detector test. For 4 years, I spent thousands of dollars on private investigators and found nothing. Last night, Molly was sitting at the kitchen table when I walked by. In a more serious tone than usual, she said, "Tom, can I talk to you for a minute?" As I sat down, she told me that John and Gail had invited us to their lake house for the weekend. I told them I was sure we would be happy to go, but I would have to consult with you. I think that would be great. You do not mind? The first thing that came to my mind was that 5 days a week at work is not enough. Now you want to be with him on the weekends too. I tried, but couldn't think of a reason not to go. With obvious displeasure, I said, "Fine." On Friday afternoon, Molly and I packed the car and headed to John and Gail's lake house. We had a map to show us how to get there, but I tried to trap her by asking, "Have you been there before?" She said she wasn't, but I'm not sure I believed her. We drove about 50 miles and finally arrived at the lake about 4 o'clock. It took a while to find their house, but when we finally found it, there were 4 people waiting for us on the porch. The only one I knew was John. I assumed Gail was inside. In addition to John, the meeting committee consisted of a very large, well-built man, a middle-aged woman who appeared to be his wife, and an extremely attractive woman in her 20s, perhaps a little older. She had long red hair, and I would consider her beautiful. Everyone except her was wearing shorts and t-shirts. She was wearing a tiny bikini. We parked and headed to the porch. After we were introduced to everyone, I asked John where Gail was. He said she wasn't here, but didn't explain why. I thought it was a little strange that we came to visit John and Gail wasn't there. Probably because I'd spent years wondering about Molly and John's relationship, my spidey senses started to kick in. Was John fooling around with this beautiful young woman? Did Gail find out about this? What does Molly know about this young lady? Molly didn't seem at all surprised to see her here. Molly and I were shown to our room. We dropped off the small amount of luggage we'd brought with us, and then joined the others in the large room. The building and interior were not bad. I would guess there were 5 bedrooms and as many bathrooms. A very large man who introduced himself as Larry asked if I wanted a beer. I said sure, and he motioned for me to follow him into the kitchen. He seemed eager to engage me in a one-on-one conversation, so I talked to him for 10-15 minutes. He was a very nice man, but after a while, I was ready to join the others. Strange, but when we returned to the large room, he loudly announced, "We have returned." Even strangers, Molly and John, were standing in the corner, and I could have sworn they were scared. They were both red-faced and seemed to be retreating from each other. I didn't like anything I'd seen so far. "Gail isn't here. Larry seemed to want me to talk to him in the kitchen. Who is this young, gorgeous girl?" Molly seemed to be in an embrace with John. I had to ask Molly what the hell was going on, so I walked back to the kitchen and motioned for Molly to follow me. She must have seen that I was at least confused and probably very upset. Instead of following me into the kitchen, Molly stopped and asked John if there was a private place where Molly and I could talk. No one seemed at all surprised by this request. At that moment, my spidey senses flared up. John showed us a room we could use, and Molly and I went in and closed the door. "Molly, what the hell is going on?" She had an expression on her face as if she had finally had to face something she was afraid to talk about. "Tom, I haven't been completely honest with you about this weekend, but please let me explain without interrupting. When I'm done, I'll answer any questions you have, and I'm sure you'll have many." First, Gail decided not to come this weekend. Gail, John, and I had several lunch meetings planning this weekend. When I'm done, I think you'll understand why you weren't invited to these meetings. This is all mostly Gail's idea, with some input from both John and myself. John accepted a promotion that would require him to move to England. She and Gail will be moving in 2 weeks. He will be replaced by a woman from the Cleveland office. I'm sure you'll definitely like John's departure and his replacement by a woman. There are 2 things I need to tell you about John and me. First of all, as I've always told you, John and I never had an affair. We have never been in the same bed together. Secondly, and this is the hardest thing I've ever had to tell you, I love you as much now as I always have, but I'm also in love with John. Let me emphasize, I didn't just say I love John. I said I was in love with John. I could no longer remain silent. I jumped to my feet and screamed, "I can't believe it, you brought me to this idiot's house to tell me you're leaving me for this idiot. I'm leaving here, and you can find your own way home." "Oh, that's right. We don't have a home anymore. You're moving to England with that idiot." I started towards the door when Molly grabbed my arm and screamed, "Please, Tom, that's not at all what I said. Please sit down and let me finish. I love you and I will not leave you. Never, ever. You are my husband, and I will be with you until death do us part." I sat down again. Let me repeat that this is mostly Gail's idea. I think the next thing I should do before I go on about why we're here this weekend is tell you who the other people are and why they're here. The nice man you were talking to in the kitchen is named Larry. He is the head of security for our company and is only here to make sure everyone is happy. I intervened. So he's here to keep me in line, right? Molly didn't answer, just continued introducing herself to other people. Jackie is a lovely girl, and she's here for you if you want her. She is a sweetheart, and also a high-class escort. Janet is actually Larry's wife, and is also an excellent cook. Suddenly a light went on in my head. The rest of this charade suddenly became crystal clear. I could see exactly what Molly, John, and Gail were planning. Molly knew that John would disappear from her life after this weekend. Two lovers, John and Molly, will spend the weekend to finally be together as lovers. After this, John and his wife Gail will set off on their adventure to England. On Sunday, after I watch my wife make love to someone else all weekend, she and I will hold hands, happily skip to our car and live happily ever after. Is this woman crazy? They brought Larry in to make sure I didn't kill John or just accidentally drown my cheating wife. Jackie is here to offer herself to me. All this to give John and Molly a weekend of love and sex. Molly, I don't agree with any of this crap. Where the hell is Gail? You say this is all her idea. Where the hell is she? She decided it would be better for her emotional well-being if she wasn't here. In exchange for the weekend, John signed a postnuptial agreement that if he and I had any contact of any kind at any time in the future, John would receive nothing in the divorcee and Gail would receive 100% of the assets. I signed a similar paper for you. Both documents begin when John and Gail leave for England. Since John and I work together, both documents also stipulate that there will be no sexual or romantic contact between us, between this Sunday evening and the day they leave for England, Tom. I will indeed be completely yours after this weekend, and I vow to spend the rest of my life making up for the pain I cause you now. Why am I here when Gail isn't? You would never agree to let me come to John's lake house without you. For the same reason you weren't invited to the planning dinners. You'd just say, damn no to everything. What if I just say no to all this damn shit now and asked you to either join me for an immediate trip home or stay here with Joan and say goodbye to our marriage? Tom, it's not like that. Please understand that although you are my soulmate for life, I need this weekend with John for closure. Besides, Gail is waiting for your call. Since it was her idea in the first place, she will explain everything to you. Her number is on the kitchen table. Molly, I ask you again not to do this. If you do that, we're done. Molly came up to me, kissed me passionately on the lips, and then said, everything will be fine, you'll see. Then, not listening to my objections, Molly left the room, took John, who was waiting for her, by the hand, and they disappeared from sight. Larry kept his eyes on me for the rest of the evening and was constantly between me and John. I seriously considered just leaving and filing for divorce, but I needed to know what it all meant and how far it would go. It is impossible to describe my condition in words. I was furious. I wanted to break the necks of that bastard and my unfaithful wife. Realizing that I couldn't handle Larry, I pretended to almost accept my fate and just wait for the weekend to end. I found Jackie and told her, "You're very tempting, but I'm not going to help Molly break our wedding vows. Molly will have to do it herself." I told Jackie that as far as I was concerned, she could go home. Or if she was curious, she could stay and laugh at all this madness. The next time I saw the lovers was at dinner. Janet had apparently been told how to seat everyone. John sat at the head of the table, Molly next to him. Larry was between me and John, and Jackie was next to me. When Janet wasn't serving, she sat across from her husband, Larry. I assumed that by now my beautiful wife had become an adulteress, thereby making me a cuckold. I noticed, probably at John's suggestion, that she didn't wear wedding rings. The only thing I did during the entire meal was point at her bare finger. After dinner, Jackie put on a beautiful red bikini and went for a swim. I sat by the pool, thinking about the correctness of my decision not to use her services. John and Molly then walked out holding hands in their swimsuits. Larry sat down next to me and tried to start a conversation. It became quite obvious that this whole charade had been staged in advance. He watched my every move and made it clear that nothing good would happen to me if I only moved towards my cheating wife and her lover. Shortly after everyone had gathered at the pool, Molly came and sat next to me. She put her head on my shoulder and said, "I love you, Tom. Everything will work out. We'll talk when we get home." I thought, this woman is crazy. I quickly got up and left, telling her loud enough for everyone to hear, "Fuck you, bitch." Tears flowed from Molly's eyes, but she didn't answer me. I spent the rest of the evening avoiding everyone except Larry, of course. He was always somewhere nearby, never taking his eyes off me. I decided to call Gail. Maybe she could shed some light on this train wreck. She must have been waiting for my call and answered on the first ring. She must have added me to her caller ID. She asked in a sad voice, "How's this whole sad business going? Are you still at the lake house?" "Gail, what the hell made you come up with this disaster?" "I don't know about you and John, but it ruined my marriage to Molly." "Tom, let me explain what I'm thinking about. I admit, I thought about my own marriage to John. I haven't thought too much about you and Molly. I think women can move forward and forgive infidelity more easily than men. I know that John deeply loves Molly and suffered for 4 years because of her refusal to have sex with him. She always told him that she wouldn't have a cheap affair behind your back. I offered them a compromise, a weekend of sex and love in exchange for never contacting each other again. I can't imagine them, thousands of miles apart, but in constant communication. I was afraid of what this might lead to. If they ever get involved in the future in any way, it could destroy each of us. I didn't invite you to plan dinners because you would have just said no to everything. And now, bitch, go to your ass, and rest assured that it will definitely not happen as you planned," I growled, and ended the call. Upon entering our bedroom, I discovered, unsurprisingly, that the only luggage there was mine. Molly's things had been moved, so it was no longer our bedroom, but just my bedroom. It made me very sad to think that Molly and John were now in their bedroom. As I lay in bed, I kept wondering how Molly could think that after this weekend, she and I could just magically rekindle our loving relationship. All I could guess was that their 4-year emotional affair, while not being sexual, made them think that the world owed them something and everyone would understand their needs. I did not sleep and carefully looked and listened to everything that was happening. Around midnight, Jackie knocked on my door and came in to ask if I was okay. She also reminded me that she is still available if needed. I thanked her for the offer and said that my refusal was one of the hardest things I've ever done, but no thanks. She said she regretted my decision. I quietly went out to the pool. The hot tub was separated from the pool by a 3-foot stone wall, so I found a lounge chair, dragged it over to the tub, and quietly settled down on it. Naturally, my watchman was probably sleeping in his room next to the adulterer's bedroom, and he was not observed nearby. I waited for an hour or so, then suddenly I heard voices approaching the pool. I immediately recognized the voices of 2 lovers. They couldn't see me, but I was only 10 feet away, hidden behind a short stone wall. Molly said, "Oh, John, this is so wonderful. I've loved you for so long, and I can finally show you how much. I will miss you, but we have 2 days to spend them in love and remember it for the rest of our lives. Let's get naked and make love in the pool. Take off your clothes. I'll get us a couple of drinks." Molly stood up and went to the kitchen to get drinks. I hated him, and I hated Molly for the absolute emptiness I felt. Finally, I waited for the moment for which I endured all day of humiliation from this asshole and my slut of a wife. John was naked and waiting for Molly when I approached him from behind. I shouted loud enough for everyone in the house to hear me. "Hey, asshole!" Asshole seems to have become my nickname for him. As he turned, the white-hot rage I'd been building up all day rushed through my veins with adrenaline, and I kicked him, aiming for his groin, hoping to completely ruin his experience of sex with my wife. He bent in half, and catching the next blow of my leg with his chin, fell backwards into the pool. I knew Larry would soon get out of bed and come after me. But I didn't think there would be a physical confrontation with him. He could yell at me, but he wouldn't want to face assault charges. And anyway, the damage to his boss had already been done, and Larry wouldn't seek revenge. The fact that Molly came running to see John's condition but didn't bother to check on me stuck in my head. I've seen enough. I accomplished everything I had planned after the message from my slutty wife, so there was nothing keeping me here anymore. I took my bag, got into the car, and drove home. However, before I left, I did one thing. I took off my wedding ring and left it on the kitchen counter. Molly might have realized that our family life was over. I spent the rest of the weekend sitting in my reclining chair at home, staring at the TV. I really wasn't paying much attention to what was happening on the screen. My mind was occupied with imagining my beautiful wife with that idiot John. Since I was at the lake house and knew the layout, I could imagine them in separate rooms, hugging with a big smile, kissing as they held each other, her in bed with him, doing something that should only be for me. I was wondering what she would say when she got home, if she did. I really wanted her not to come back, but I don't know where else she could have gone. On Sunday evening, a car pulled up and stopped in front of my house. It was John and Molly. John got out of the car with the intention of going over to open the door. He probably asked Molly to wait and let him come and open her door, obviously to humiliate me. I think he forgot that the human body stiffens up after an injury and then a long ride. He winced as he walked out of his door from the kick I gave him 2 days ago. He needed to hold on to the car with his hands in order to walk around the car from the side. Finally, he walked to the door and struggled to open the door for her, looking rather awkward as he did so. He helped Molly out of the car. Moreover, Molly helped John escort her to the house. I was glad that my parting blow at the lake house had apparently interrupted their lovemaking. This was all to show me that he was returning her to me after she stayed with him when she had a choice between him or me at the lake house. They held each other like lovers, not caring what I or the neighbors might think. I've had enough. I opened the front door and took a step towards John. Asshole, if you don't get out of here in 5 seconds, I'll do more than just beat the crap out of you. John limped quickly back to his car and drove off. I returned to the house and sat down in my deep chair. Molly didn't even watch him drive away. She walked through the front door with a fake smile on her face. I'm home, honey. Her behavior seemed so ridiculous. She acted as if she had just returned home from a night out with the girls. I just ignored her and continued watching TV. She came over and tried to kiss me, but I pushed her away. The only thing I told her was, "From now on, you're in the guest bedroom. Tomorrow I'm going to a lawyer and starting to draw up divorce papers. If you haven't forgotten, the house was mine before we got married, and your name is not on any documents, so think before tomorrow where you will go to live. You can start packing your things. Don't try to tell me anything. From now on, I won't talk to you anymore, and all our further communication will take place through lawyers. From now on, you can be free and replace your lost lover with whoever you want." I went back to watching TV. Molly's shoulders sagged. It became clear to her that reconciliation was impossible. She sobbed bitterly as she walked up the steps. She lost both her lover and her husband in one weekend. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one.